and welcome to Ibrox Uncovered, the ultimate Rangers podcast with Mark Haitley, Alec Ray and me, Lindsay Heron. The Premiership season's off and running and it looks like normal service has been resumed. The Champions League is beckoning and Steven Gerrard's side looks stronger than ever for the challenges ahead. Across the city, maybe not so much. We'll cover all the key issues today and we've got a fantastic exclusive as former chairman Dave King is joining us shortly. Well, Rangers have begun the defence of their title with a 3-0 win over Livingston with 23,000 fans inside Ibrox. Mark, what are your initial thoughts about the weekend?
We set the bar very high last year. I think we've strengthened the squad. Again, from the bench, we've got match winners coming on to score goals. I thought we were very, very enthusiastic. I thought very, very fit as well. At this stage of the season, you're still finding your legs, but I thought it was pretty much the same as last season, starting with a clean sheet. Alan McGregor rested, John McLaughlin coming in, keeping another clean sheet. And as I say, strength in depth. The squad is super strong. Wouldn't be surprised if we see probably one, maybe more, two coming in. One maybe going out. But as I see it, it is business as usual. And I think on the other side of the city, it's business as usual.
I mean, that, Alec, that's, as Mark was saying there, I mean, the home record that Steven Gerrard is on at the moment is quite remarkable. I think that's 20 consecutive league victories. Yeah. You know, going by the 19 home games last season.
I think it's remarkable consistency. I think Mark's right in terms of the players at his disposal. I think that's one of the things that I've managed to do over the last couple of years. I've managed to get two players for each position. I looked at young Bassi at left back. You know, his athleticism is incredible. You know, he bombs up
Final
and down.
ball, just the way he
listen, I said that. I said that as well, Mark. And I think part of the problem for him is that the quality from Barisic and Tavernier is at a level that these young guys have to aspire to.
That's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, of course you do.
You want to be batting off each other. Yeah. You know, you're looking at the guy that's playing in your position and thinking, I've got to up my game. Yeah. I've got to up my game again. That's what Stevens wanted right from the beginning. And what you just said there, two for every position. Some positions, we've got three people vying for one position. And they're all, as Stevens says, wanting to be in the side. So the only way to do that is impress every day in training. Once you're doing that, standards become exponentially better and better every time.
It's like building. It's early in the morning, he's throwing in exponential.
That's 3 coffees for you, sunshine.
Exponentially, dear boy.
Yes, well, listen, do you know the interesting thing about what Mark said there? Mark says there could be 3 players. Now, I get that for a centre in the park. I get it for centre forward and centre half because they're key areas. However, I think a lot of the fringe players will kind of be trimmed back. I think you have to streamline the squad. I think you have to keep the standards high. To give you an example, Tavernier at the weekend gets 2 assists in the opening game of the weekend, Lindsay. And that is what the rest have to adhere to because the one thing about Tavernier is every time you look at his numbers, they're sensational. You know, 19 goals last year and I think it was, I think it was about 12, 14 assists, which is incredible. You know, that's almost like a winger. Then you factor in the defensive element as well. You look back at the weekend, another clean sheet. So I think that all bodes well for Steven going forward. But everything's coming thick and fast at the moment. And I think as a player and as a management team, it's just kind of getting them back into the training ground today, reassess, and then we've obviously got a real congested fixture over the coming weeks.
Yeah, and refocus. Exactly what we did last year. I think we were very, very good at that. And that's why we had that consistency of performance. We were allowed to enjoy that moment. And straight away within, I was going to say, 36, 48 hours, we're focusing on everything else that's coming and then leaving it, parking it and moving on again. That's a successful way of looking at any season, especially when you're going for everything.
Absolutely. And the other thing was the rotation of players, Alec, is going to be key in the coming weeks. The Champions League has kicked in and it's so important that Rangers get to the group phase, isn't it? That's the next milestone for Steven Gerrard, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we've obviously seen that at the weekend. You're talking about this rotation. You've obviously seen Wright, you've seen Roof, they're making big impacts. And I think that's what Steven will be looking for because there will be rotation. I think that if you look back to last year, Mark, week on week, so you might have a Tuesday game or a weekend game or a midweek game, and we would have 5 or 6 changes, but it was seamless. And that's the reason why, you know, the players are bedded down in the formation. And you'll need that for Europe. But I'm going to be fascinated how Europe pans out this because obviously we're at top table. We have to get to that group stage. And we've got Malmo, who we played almost a decade ago.
It is remarkable, isn't it? That it's ironic, I suppose, that they are the opponents. You know, who would have thought 10 years ago when Rangers got knocked out that night that it would be a decade before they were back in European qualifiers? It's amazing.
Yeah, but that's how the game changes. If you're not building while you're on top and working as hard, it is a quick fall down that mountain, by the way. As our... used to say...
Noisy neighbours.
Nearest rivals.
No, noisy neighbours.
Yeah, noisy neighbours have found out to their amazement. No, but it's not a cost. You see it. Things like this in football happen very, very quickly if you're not focused on the job that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the contrast for you then, Mark? Because obviously the last decade, Celtic have had they've literally been cycling downhill. The first challenge, going up the mountain, they've obviously fallen off the bike.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I think when you're at the bottom, it's really, really hard. I mean, you have to take big risks. You have to, lay out probably more than you want to lay out. So that's the risk right there. See, when you're on the top, it's less of a risk because you are in command. You're in command basically of the whole market. That's Celtic were. Once you're on top of the pile, you're working as hard as you can and not being lazy.
So being complacent then?
Being complacent, you just pile it on, and you keep your nearest rivals down there as long as you can. And so if you are on every year building exponentially, again comes in here every season, then that margin should stay the same. And we've changed it around very, very quickly, purely because, Celtic haven't done their job.
Fell asleep at the wheel, I think was the phrase.
Yeah. But you talked about that, and Rangers recruitment seems to be very professionally done, Mark.
Yeah, we're looking 3 wingers down.
Yeah.
We're looking at 3, you're looking to monitor. I mean, you're monitoring 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds right now because that's the model. You bring in players in as we've done, younger players from bigger clubs. Once you get to this level, that becomes easier because those younger players want to come and join the success of your Champions League, winning leagues, winning cups, and all that sort of stuff. So last year was a great little message sent out there. We've won a championship. Like that with the Champions League right now. So if we can qualify for Champions League, not only does it the younger players get alerted from other academies around the country, but you're also getting the bigger players that now 24s and 25s, 23s, 24s, the kind of player that we want to buy, and then obviously sell on down the line. So that where we are right now is brilliant.
I think by actually getting to group stages, and obviously there's a couple of more ties to get through before that, obviously there's a financial aspect. But trying to attract players, they want to play at the top table. Because if you can actually showcase at that kind of premier level of opposition, all of a sudden your market value, which is Mark's talking about then, because it exponentially goes up, it fires up the way, and it also gives you profile. So all of a sudden, before you know it, because with the greatest respect to Scottish football, it is a stepping stone for a lot of guys.
It's like Nathan Patterson last year. Nathan Patterson comes on, right?
16 seconds
16 seconds, he's made a name for himself. Nathan Patterson's name will be all round Europe right now. That's just one example of what you do and the model that we work with.
Exactly. The thing about it is the contrast could hardly be more vivid. I mean, Celtic's scrambling about for players at the moment. The recruitment has been disastrous, you would have to say. Whereas Rangers seems to be smooth and very slick.
Well, it is. Well,
that's because of the organisation, Mark.
First and foremost, you've got a leader at your helm that is literally world famous, right? So he comes in allegedly with a lack of experience, but as smart people do, they put smarter people probably around you to make you look even better.
That's the way I feel the day in the studio.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I think it's just having that role model, that professional, instantly recognisable with the game of football, Stephen. And I think this is where, and I just pop out at the other side again, at the other side of the city. As soon as the Brendan Rodgers thing came and went, players were coming in and Brendan didn't want them, and then Brendan left, that was start of their downfall. Yeah, absolutely. Because there was a man that knows the game of football. Now, what Celtic have done, they brought in an unknown, right? And what's the first thing as a player you really look for? What they're doing, how well they're doing in the leagues, have they been winning and all that sort of stuff, and who's the manager, basically, and then the facilities. And there's your problem right there.
Absolutely.
So the model is what we've done and what Dave King did, is bring that guy in, that flagship manager to match the club's
identity.
That's the word.
Yeah, they're looking for identity. As soon as you'll think about Rangers, Steven Gerrard automatically pops up there. You've got a guy who's known across the globe. He's an elite footballer. Then he goes into the helm. Yeah. Obviously, this puts him on another because regardless of stature as a manager, when you go into the management game, you've seen it time after time. You've got household names, and they don't succeed. So all of a sudden, you see Steven. You look at an invincible season. And I feel as if, and what I liked, there's two aspects what I liked about coming out of the Rangers training ground recently. First one was, we've enjoyed 55. Let's refocus in 56. and also the way that they go about their business. I just love the whole structure within Rangers at the moment. And I just feel it's professional, it's organised. I think Ross Wilson has to take a big thing with there. But this all has to be sanctioned by the board. You have a kind of sliding scale, Mark, where everybody is actually in sync, and you have a model. Is what you're saying, professional?
Yeah.
Is it crucial then at this moment that Rangers are relentless in this first month?
Yep.
And while Celtic are trying to get their act together, because then you could stretch away early on in the season and make it very difficult.
It can be done. Listen, the season in a short space of time. I mean, I'm looking at the league right now on the first week of the results, and you're thinking, who's going to come out that pack, right? Who would you say is in a good situation right now? Well, you've got the Hearts thing coming up, so they're all excited. So they'll be buzzing around for 2 or 3 games until they get a bad result or whatever.
Yep.
Because the strength in depth there won't be as strong. You've got Hibs, who have decent personnel. I think they've got a stronger squad than they had last year. And you've got you're looking at Aberdeen and what they're going to do this season. So all of a sudden, you've got Celtic that are on top of the pile now, are looking below them.
The one thing that from my own experience is, see if you get knocked out of Europe early doors and then you lose your opening or drop points in your open, you're right behind the black ball from the off, Lindsay. That was my experience because we get knocked out against CSK.
Yeah.
And then obviously we're up to Aberdeen, the opening game of the season. And the actual blowback from that was ridiculous. But if the gap becomes that little bit bigger, which most certainly can, because we have an Old Firm game in a couple of weeks, if you're going into September 4, 5, 6 points adrift for the off, Celtic still have this catch up because the recruitment process has been so slow.
Yes.
What it does do as well, if that scenario pans out, it also gives Stephen a time then to play different sort of teams.
Formations,
for different sort of competitions. It allows him to have that luxury at an early stage of the season where he can focus on the League Cup and all that sort of stuff.
Absolutely. And it's you talk about the Old Firm game, Alec. Do you think it's quite cheeky or quite interesting that Rangers are now looking to unveil the flag on that day?
No, well, the thing is, I think it's probably the right thing to do, because obviously the fans, it'll be the first opportunity to get the fans back in. The majority, I think, I'm not even sure we're going to give Celtic fans. I think by the SPFL rules, you have to give them a certain number. So there may well be a couple of hundred in the stadium, but predominantly it'll be the full stadium. God willing, it'll be full
stadium.
So
yeah.
That would be great, Lindsay, because obviously it's been a trying time for everyone. We've had people on saying it's 15 months since I've been at Ibrox. So if we could get a full house, unfurl the flag, and then it just makes the game all that more spicy.
Exactly. Well, talking about spicy, I mean, it's Dundee United next weekend away. Let's talk about that. I mean, is there still resentment? Is there still ill feeling towards them, particularly after all the events of 2012? Or is it time to move on? Or do you think grudges still are being borne by many, many Rangers supporters?
Why are you looking at me, Lindsay?
You're a man that bears a grudge. I remember you telling me.
No, listen, I've still harboured a grudge for the 1987 season. Yes, I was playing Falkirk against Morton, but that's... you're absolutely right. There will be a large proportion of the fans will still have a gripe because of they were very much... Going back to Stephen Thompson and their fans saying that we will not buy season tickets unless they get put down to the bottom tier. You can't forget that stuff. You can't. Now, listen, I'm like a bit older, middle-aged now, so I can actually put things like that to bed. Yeah. However, always be there. And this is one of the things, and they were one of the most vocal. So I understand the fans still harbouring a grudge against Dundee United, and I think that will go on for a long time.
Different ownership though now, isn't it?
Well, that's what I was going to say.
You've moved on, you know. So that mentality of that ownership, I would like to think has moved on. Yeah. So, and it's, and that's what it is for me.
But do you think that the Rangers as a club should try and build bridges a bit better? They seem to be in a situation at the moment where they're isolationist a little bit. You know what I mean? They're not really, it's not hands across the country really too much.
I don't know what the actual relationship's with, because we don't know what's actually going on behind the scenes, because obviously there's people communicating to try and get Rangers players on loan and things. So I'm not exactly sure in terms of where they are. Yeah. There seems to be a front where Rangers are thinking, right, okay, we've had a real good kicking off a lot of people. Yeah. And the thing about Rangers at the moment, Lindsay, and I think this has been things that have been very evident throughout my time watching Scottish football is, see, when you're from a power of strength, sometimes it's important to flex your muscles. Yes. That doesn't mean that you're not having covert where you're actually kind of speaking to different clubs and things and building bridges. Stuart Robinson's back on the SPFL board.
Yeah.
And it's a good time to have him on there because we've just became the champions for the 55th time. I think they make some very valid points. I think some of the stuff coming out at the weekend, and this has been driven by Rangers, I think the deal that was actually signed for 25 million per year.
The Sky deal.
The Sky deal. No, it's great that we have a partner like Sky because they've been very much our partner for a long time, and they're very good. However, I can't think for the life of me why you would want to kind of just make it one provider. Now, you look at across all these different countries. You'll take England, for example. They have Sky, BT and Amazon. So they have 3 different packages available. Why would we leave it to one package? It beggars belief because...
Selling your soul to one
But Mark, there's one for you. See if you're selling a player. If Rangers are selling a player, just hypothetically, Alfredo Morelos or Ryan Kent are getting sold today.
Yeah.
You want 3 or 4 clubs come at the table.
Sure.
And the reason why you want 3 or 4 is because you then have a bidding war. And and the great, obviously you're all selling that player to one club, but see with the rights, you can sell it to 2 or 3 and trying competition will always raise the price.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think that's a good thing with Stuart Robinson and that as well.
He's asking questions.
Well, absolutely.
Right now, fantastic news, boys. We've got Dave King on the line joining us live on the podcast. Dave, a very great welcome to Ibrox Uncovered. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you, guys, and I'm very happy to be able to chat to you again.
Brilliant stuff. We're just talking with Mark and Alec, Dave, about the season gone past and the aspirations for the season ahead. But just looking at it, in perspective, Dave, I mean, 55 was achieved, but it's the turnaround in fortunes which has been quite remarkable in the last year. You said it was the most important title ever. I mean, is that still your view?
Yeah, it is still my view, and I mean, I have to agree with you that kind of looking back on it now with, let's say, less of the immediate raw emotion that one had at the time of just winning. You know, if I do look back at it now, I think the relative ease with which it was won, both in terms of the gap that they ended up at the top of the league, but also the manner in which they went through the season, setting records, the performances at home, it really was quite extraordinary in terms of the dominance, given that, I mean, certainly if I'm honest, I don't know what other supporters might think, but if I look at the beginning of the season, I certainly had, and I think the word aspirations is probably an aspiration where I felt that we had a really good chance of winning the league against a strong Celtic team who were, you know, as motivated as any Celtic team would have been to do 10 in a row and to go down in history. And yeah, I thought we would be competitive, but to look back on that and look at how competitive we were and how dominant we were, it really is quite extraordinary, you know, kind of doing it with a little bit of distance between now and the end of the season. Really quite remarkable.
Dave, do you feel as if this is a real opportunity due to the finances, you know, as an opportunity to get to the Champions League group stage? The winners of the league title this year will also go straight into the group stage next year. Do you think this is a pivotal time in Rangers' evolution, if you like?
I'm probably more excited in a certain sense by what we achieved as a club in determining what happens from next season, because, you know, the idea of Rangers winning this season and getting automatic entry into the group stages, I think it's just incredibly exciting because, I mean, as you guys know, getting into these group stages, I know we're there, but if I look at really what lays ahead of the club, you know, it's a tough ask to get out of the group stages with some of the teams that you face. So it really is, again, a great credit to the club that pretty much by Rangers' performances alone over the last couple of seasons that we're getting automatic entry into next season. So in terms of the money, the thrill, the Champions League, to some extent, I think this is a bigger season in terms of the evolution of the club than even last season was.
So the model of the club, David, going forward, when you came in, the Champions League is obviously a massive part of that model, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think for Rangers to be financially sustainable at the level on the pitch that's required, I would say the kind of minimum is group stages of Europa League. And I think from a budgeting point of view, you know, one should be looking at that kind of level. So if you do get that Champions League boost, it is just so significantly financially superior. And it really allows you to do so much more to kick on, invest in the team and invest in the infrastructure of the club. So, you know, I just think that if we could do it this season and certainly next season, if we can win the league and have the predictability of knowing we're going into the group stages, because you can also you can invest ahead of that, whereas you always have that kind of difficult situation each season where you say, I need resources to get me through, but so do I front load the resources and what happens if we don't get through? because you've signed players for 3 years. So it's always a difficult balance, which is made significantly better by knowing you're going straight through to the group stages. You can just plan so much more carefully.
Yeah, I was going to say helps the manager as well, because he doesn't have to throw away players. I mean, on the cheap, if you know what I mean, where we can afford to keep hold of them and use them to our benefit, instead of, letting players just drift away for hardly any money at all.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Do you think, Dave, that Stephen will be energised and motivated to really drive on now as Rangers manager? There are obviously constant rumours that he'll go down to England at some point. I think you're on record as saying that, he is committed. Is that your view just now?
Oh yeah, it hasn't changed at all. I mean, I think it's not even, I think there's absolute certainty on that. I think that in Stephen, I think we have a manager who is committed. He's absolutely not looking to go anywhere. And I think he is energised. I mean, I think that he saw last season as being a very critical, important stepping stone. I mean, it was a stepping stone. That doesn't kind of take away from it. It was a necessary stepping stone. But for him, the end game wasn't winning one league title. The end game was building on that. And I think from Stephen's point of view, I would imagine the motivation level for him personally is very, very high this season, because he knows and he's smart enough to understand he's going to have a completely different relationship with his players and with his supporters. It's one thing when you come into a season when you're coming in the back of where Rangers had come from, and there was still a hope and expectation and aspiration of winning the league and stopping 10 in a row, and the whole man management, but one game at a time, and in chasing things. But now you come into a season where these dynamics have changed completely. There's now an expectation on Rangers. Now it's a question of, you go into a game sometimes. I was very concerned about the opening game, not because I didn't think we could win the game, but I didn't like the idea that things were being taken for granted. It was like, well, Rangers should win and we should win the league. These dynamics, I think, change, and it's going to be very different from Stephen's point of view to manage his squad, manage his players, keep it down to, guys, we need to fight for every 3 points. When to some extent, people are giving you the points already before you play the game. So the man management skills, I think, become very different. The relationship with the supporters become very different when you're expected to win. So I just think it's going to be very interesting for him in terms of his own career, going through periods of defending titles and expectations of Champions League. So I think he's really enthusiastic and excited about taking his own career, if you want, to a next level and doing it with Rangers.
Exactly. The next 12 months could be absolutely incredible, Dave, if you consider he could qualify for the group stages, defend the title and go straight back into the group stages. I mean, that would be one of the biggest years in Rangers history, and not just success on the field, but obviously financially, because 30-40 million pounds coming into the coffers.
Exactly. And I think, and you've got a club right now where, that money is going to go back into the team. I mean, you don't have shareholders who are looking to take dividends. So it would be fantastic from the club's point of view and from Stephen's point of view, if he was to win the league this year. And of course, it's far from being done. We've only had one game behind us. But if he was able to do that, so the motivation for the team, I guess, as players, you guys know better than me, to actually go out and win and defend a title, I think it's a different achievement. And then from the club's point of view, knowing, say, by the middle of May, you're going to be playing in the Champions Group stages, and you've got that cash and you can start to invest in your squad and kick on to a different level again. So it's really, to me, as much as last year was the most important season in terms of, let's call it, the rebuild of the club, I think this is the most exciting season. It's the season with the greatest potential in terms of now kicking on from that and really taking the club to another level on the park.
It's called putting the boot in and making a statement, David.
Dave, you've obviously mentioned the infrastructure that Stephen has brought to the club. You have Ross Wilson there, and it looks as if across the road at Celtic Park, it looks as if they're the opposite. How difficult is it to then turn that around?
It is difficult because you're doing, if I look at where, looking across the road, you get that level of instability that we had it for different reasons. We had it on the back of failure. They've got it, I guess, in the back of success. But it's still instability, when you've got a new manager coming into a new environment that they haven't managed in before, with probably not a lot of, I guess, team recognition, player recognition. You've got a new director of football who still is coming in or is not coming in. You've got changes at the executive structure at the top. And it takes a long time for these things to set, even with the best will in the world. And even if you pick the best team, they can never gel immediately. So I think that period of transition, I think it transfers itself onto supporters, it transfers itself onto the team. So I think from Rangers' point of view, I'm delighted with Ross. That not only do we have, I think it's proven that we've put the right people in place there, but I think they've just got that team unit. They're very, very settled. They've got their visions, they've got their strategies, they've got their ambitions. So I think we really, as a club, are in a very, very good place right now.
You talked before, Dave, about the financial model, and obviously investors not seeking dividends and the soft loan situation. That has to come to an end, and you have to become self-sufficient. Are Rangers getting close to that, and do they now have to sell some of their marketable assets?
Look, I can't talk for the board because I don't have privy to what their existing business plans and that are. But if I look at the club financially, if I look at the new commercial deals they've been doing, because James Bisgrove is an absolute outstanding man in that field. I would say, other than the impact of COVID, which has affected all of the clubs, then Rangers would be self-sufficient already right now. With having won the league and with the success in Europe last season. But COVID, the COVID impact this year will still be there. I think it's likely to be less severe than last year. But as I see it at the moment, I certainly don't get a sense that the club says desperate, say in the case of Morelos, which is the one that always comes to mind. I don't get the sense that even though we've brought players in, there's any desperate financial need to sell Morelos. I mean, there may be a footballing need where one looks at the value and you go to the manager and say, listen, we can get X. Do you want to keep the player or do you want X? And he says, well, in this case, I'd rather have the player than X. Or he says, look, if I get X, I think I could recycle it into other areas and make my squad better. But at least it becomes a footballing decision where you sit down with the manager and say, listen, this is what you can get. The money's yours because we're not taking away from you. What do you want to do about it? Now, that's where Rangers are right now, and I think that's what makes it particularly exciting, I think, for everyone.
Dave, we obviously spoke to you a couple of months before Title 55. You had purchased a bottle of Vive Clique 1872.
It was a Chateau Yquem, I'll have you know.
Yquem, was it? Yeah. Well, how did it go down anyway? That's more importantly, how did it go down?
Yeah, it was Yquem. From a purely wine point of view, it was slightly nuttier and slightly more oxidized than you'd expect of a young Yquem, but that's you'd expect that for a wine that's only 50 years old. But it was very, very drinkable, and I quaffed it quite quickly.
And very enjoyable, leaving a sweet taste in your mouth, David.
I could have drunk petrol and it would have tasted sweet.
Can you quite believe, though, that sort of 6 years on, Dave, from your takeover with the other guys, that this is where Rangers are now in this remarkable position?
It is extraordinary, and I've thought back on that a few times, because when you're going through, as they say, sometimes the only way to get to the end of something is by going through it. You can't go around it. But when you are going through it, and as you're going through it, other things pop up you didn't expect. And, there's just things coming your way all the time. You can sometimes, the vision is there, the drive is there, the goal is there, but you still wonder sometimes, will I ever actually get there? And so it really is, it's obviously immensely satisfying, I think, for myself and everyone associated with the club. But I must say, it's just even as I think on it now, it's just such for me, it's still a kind of emotional thrill just to say, we actually did it. We all took it on. A lot of us fought together. You guys know, Mark, you were there involved at the time. I mean, unless you were in the thick of it, in the eye of that storm, you can't really understand what we were going through and what we're battling internally. But also there was a lot of external forces, some of those who I think should have been working with us, but were also working against us as well. So it really is, it's just fantastic for the club and for everyone associated with the club to be in the position we find ourselves in now.
How are you enjoying life as a supporter now? No longer a board member. Are you more relaxed view of things, Dave?
No, it's absolutely fantastic. I'm back to worrying about missing 3-foot putts.
On the back of that, David, just like to thank you for your time today. Next time you're in, look us up. We'll have a nice little 4-ball. Me, you, Alex, Lindsay, up at Glasgow Golf Course. It'll be lovely.
Love to. Thank you so much. Anytime, guys. Thank you.
You take care, David.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a million, Dave.
Oh well, guys. Bye-bye.
Fantastic to talk to the former chairman there, guys. I mean, always honest and open and so knowledgeable about the game as well.
That's the only way you can be. You can't cover up something that's uncoverable, if you know what I mean, because that is the game of football. And we was talking about this before we came on air. You have to be clear and transparent in everything you do in football. That's the only way a football team can go forward. And Dave is that sort of guy. You know, he's always open, not afraid to come out and say what he thinks. That's being honest to yourself.
Yeah, for me, it was really important to get a real idea of where the club's at. You know, he spoke about in terms of possibly selling or not. He also spoke about being able to, put structures in place. The importance important to actually recognise where Rangers are at the moment, and also recognise where our rivals are at. And this is a really pivotal moment for Rangers going forward, because the next year could be a real acid test in terms of where the club want to go to for the short to medium term over the next few years, because of that Champions League money, because you get a flavour of it. Dave's obviously been there at a time where Rangers were earning money.
It's ambition. How far do you want to go with this monster?
Absolutely. And it's he's such a humble and man, and he offers great humility, Mark. I mean, his legacy will really be that he saved the club.
Absolutely.
But he doesn't feel that way, you know.
No, but I think that's the sort of guy he is. You know, he's a supporter of the football club, very humble man, and just says it how it is. You know, if he has that in his head, that's what he says. You know, and if people don't like it, then people don't like it. He's being fair and honest to himself.
Well, Rangers have a great start to the season, but we couldn't have had a better start to the season here on Ibrox Uncovered. Mark, Alec, thank you so much indeed. Remember, follow us on Instagram and on Twitter, The Rangers Connection. Give us a shout and we'll try and get some information on in the next show.